When we had started talking about the Vedas, we had mentioned that Hinduism is a highly impersonal religion, and that's why it's also known as eternal religion and Sanatan Dharma. Actual name for Hindu Dharma is Sanatan Dharma, the eternal religion. The name eternal religion is because since time immemorial, we don't know when it started, how it started. We just know that for some reason some sages went into the depths of their silence, depths of their meditation, and there they came face to face with God, reality, and spiritual truths on which this world is founded. And the very spiritual principles that make this world go, and that which is the ultimate reality of this universe. It was not by one particular sage. It was not even by a group of sages. The tradition has continued since time immemorial, and it has continued till date. Compared to this, in other religions, we find that every religion has a founder, and the truth that they perceived and that they taught to their chosen disciples were carried forward. In essence, there is no difference between the truths of Hinduism and the truths of other religion, excepting for certain names. When you put certain names, then of course things differ. But of course, when you have one particular person working in a field, and when you have thousands of those working in the same field, the results will always be different. Think of science, whether it be Newton, be it Einstein, be it Galileo, be it anyone. Had there been only one mind, only one scientist, the shape of science would have been different. And because we have thousands and thousands of great minds working in the field of science, we know that how enriching science has been. Same with Hinduism. Hinduism is an extremely enriched religion, and it continues to be enriched. For example, when you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, in which we have the words of Sri Ramakrishna, and it happened, say, barely 100 years ago, you find the same spiritual truths which the sages of the Vedas and the sages of Upanishads had uttered. Those very spiritual realizations realized afresh without any formal training. And then you find that it was everything that has been held on in this country since millennia has been proved once again correct. That shows how this religion is eternal. So, now, very interesting thing about the fact about these sages is that since Hinduism focused more on spiritual principles, they never paid attention to the personal life of the sages. This is in contrast with other religions. For example, if you look at science, we realize that the scientific truths and scientific principles are much more important than the biography of those persons. For example, Lavoisier, he found oxygen. No one knows much about his biography. We know that he found oxygen, the properties of oxygen. And Einstein was pretty popular, so people know a lot about his life. But people do not know much about the biography of, say, Newton. It is his principles that really count. Something similar happened in India. In India, no one ever paid attention to the life and times of the sages who contributed to this Vedic corpus. People were more interested only in the spiritual principles that they had discovered and that they had left for the mankind. Now, these sages, they were perceiving essentially that Satchidananda alone is true. God alone is true. And what is God? He exists. He is of the nature of consciousness. He is consciousness, and He is blissful. Now, every time we are saying He, we should not misunderstand Him to be a gender specific. He is gender neutral. So it should be it. but then it sounds too crude, that's why we are using the term he. So the supreme principle is existent, conscious and blissful. Now these sages, they realize that it is that very principle, Sat, Chit and Ananda, that is behind everything that there is in this world. If there is an object, that is also manifestation of that same Satchidananda. And this entire universe is also manifestation of that Satchidananda. And the gods, with a small g, the gods, whose prayers we discussed in the earlier classes, earlier talks, they are also manifestation of that Satchidananda. And that God, under no condition, can ever be perceived entirely by the human mind. It's just not possible. Because human mind is limited. By its very nature, it's limited. Once we discuss philosophy, we shall see how mind is limited. After all, mind belongs to this world. That is this universe. And the universe is limited. The world is limited. So mind has to be limited. God, by its very nature, is infinite. So finite can never conceive of the infinite. So mind can never conceive of God, the infinite. Any mind can perceive of God only in its finite form. And that's what exactly the sages did. It chose some of those beautiful things which are, since everything is the manifestation of God, so they chose the favorable ones and tried to see them as masks of the infinite. They worshipped them. They prayed to them, knowing very well that that particular thing is not God. It is manifestation of God. It is the mask of the infinite. So, during these masks we had, while we were discussing some Vedic prayers in the previous classes, we had discussed certain gods. Today we would be discussing the first hymn of the Rig Veda, which is dedicated to Agni, fire. And once we go through this hymn, this prayer, we shall see how the Hindu sages were not idol worshippers. They were actually the worshippers of the infinite. But knowing very well that the infinite cannot be worshipped, forget about being worshipped, it cannot even be conceived. So they just put that mask and they saw Agni as representing that infinite. So the sages had, in the depths of their meditation, realized Agni, the fire, as representing the highest form of that infinite. And when these prayers are performed, as the Hindus have been performing for the last at least 7,000-8,000 years, it is expected that the devotees will definitely be benefited. And of course, you see, by nature, we people are so selfish. We will never do a thing unless it benefits us. People are by nature very selfish. Now people have been holding on to these Vedic principles not because somebody is trying to cheat them. It's simply because people have been benefited. We don't know if they have been benefited materially, but definitely they have been benefited spiritually and definitely at a mental level. These prayers definitely bring peace, and these prayers definitely uplift a person spiritually. Otherwise, whilst an entire race would have dedicated itself to these things. Now, the topic is the first hymn of Rig Veda. Here, we just, let me explain one very simple thing. A prayer, any prayer, is known as a mantra. Under normal conditions, when a verse is written, it is known as shloka. But the Vedas are held in such supreme respect that they are not known as shloka. They are usually known by the word denoting the particular Veda, and in common they are known as mantra. So, for example, there is this Gayatri mantra which we discussed earlier. And when there are quite a few mantras taken together, it is known as a hymn. And the Sanskrit term for that is Sukta, S-U-K-T-A. So there is mantra and sukta. Sukta is essentially collection of mantras, and sometimes suktas are actually prayers, and we are discussing the first hymn of the Rig Veda because there are 4 Vedas and it's not possible for us to cover each Veda, and in earlier times it used to take more than 12 years to study these Vedas, and we are trying to cover it in a few classes. Naturally, there is no possibility of covering even a bit of it. So we are just having a look at some of the famous hymns, and one of them is the first hymn of the Rig Veda. Now, before we get into it, just a flashback of the things that we studied. It is Rig Veda, and we had mentioned that the spiritual wisdom that the sages got in the depths of their meditation came to be known as Ved. Ved, the word Ved has come from the root Vid, and the grammarians define that Ved has many meanings. 3 popular of them is Jnane, Labhe and Vicharane. Gyan is knowledge, Labhe to attain something, and Vicharane to discuss, to cogitate, to meditate, to contemplate. But generally, Ved is used in the sense of to know. And that's how any kind of knowledge is Vidya. Vidya is from that Viddhatu. And if you take it in a particular sense of studying, then Ved is also used for any particular branch of science. For example, we say physical sciences, chemical sciences, biological sciences. In the same way, there is Ayurveda, that which deals with medicinal sciences, Dhanurved, the science of archery and things like that. And however, in its real proper sense, Vedas mean only the 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Samved, Yajurved and Atharved. In the second talk that we had, we discussed these things in a little more detail. Here we will just be talking about the basic things that the tradition has it, because there is no proof. Every time we use the word tradition, it simply means that there is no historical evidence, just that the teacher has been passing on this particular wisdom to his student. That there was a huge mass of the Vedic wisdom, and Valmiki Ramayana, who definitely was before Vyasa, Valmiki was definitely before Vyasa, he does talk about Rig Veda, Samved, Yajurved, but the tradition has that the Vedic wisdom was somehow loose and was lost, and Vyasa collected all of them and organized them very well. And depending on the kind of meters it had, Rig Veda, the collection of those Rig, which is also known as Risha, came to be known as Rig Veda, and certain mantras which could be sung on the lute veena came to be known as Samved, and the mantras that were mostly used for offering oblations in Yajna became Yajurved, and everything else that could not be accommodated in the 3 became Atharved. Now, to make sure that this wisdom is not lost, he gave responsibility to 4 of his major disciples, and Rig Veda was given to a disciple known as Paila. Paila is a very famous name in ancient Vedic traditions. Now, because those mantras were collected, and after collection they were organized, we find that there have been a lot of repetitions in different mantras, and indeed there are sometimes 100, 140 mantras have been repeated. You find it here, you also find it at some other place, and sometimes with very little variation. So, but in general, when we look at the Rig Veda, we find that it has been very systematically organized. Rig Veda comes in 10 parts, mandala. They are known as mandala. Mandala basically means collection. The first and the 10th, these two are not well organized. But from 2nd to 9th, they are well organized. One of the criteria is that the Vedas belong to certain families. So they have been organized family-wise. And after organizing family-wise, we have, according to the gods, of that Agni is the, first it begins with Agni. Agni means fire god. And he is followed by Indra. So first prayers are to Agni and then to Indra. And in that also we find that in the beginning you have mantras, you have hymns which have more number of mantras, and slowly the number goes on decreasing. Then comes another god. So first you have the longest prayer, and slowly the number decreases. So there is a very clear pattern, and wherever you see pattern, you know that it has been organized by someone. And that's why the belief that Vyasa organized it becomes more confirmed. Now, the mantras of the Rig Veda are in general considered to be the oldest, because after all these things were not done in one day. Now, if you ask any traditionalist, a traditional Brahmin, he will say that the entire Veda came out of the mouth of Brahma. So whole creation has to be simultaneous. But if you look at the language of the mantras, you can clearly see that the language is changing a bit. So the mantras of the Rig Veda are considered to be the oldest, and of course they are the most important because they are prayers. And the prayers are of such high quality. Like if you had listened to our previous 3 talks where we were discussing some of those famous Vedic prayers, you would have seen the kind of prayers they offer. And Rig Veda is also important because Samved, Yajurved and Atharved, they draw heavily from Rig Veda, like quite a few mantras. And in Samved, of course, most of the mantras of Samved are from Rig Veda. That shows how important Rig Veda is. In general, Rig Veda has in total 1028 hymns. Okay. Actually, it's a Sandhi, it's a combined word. It's 1028 hymns. And of these 1028 hymns, the first hymn is known as Agni Suktam, prayer to Agni. This is what we will be discussing together. Of these 1028 hymns, Sukta, the highest is to Indra. It's roughly 251 hymns. It is followed by Agni, who has 200 hymns dedicated to Agni. And whenever Vedic sacrifices take place, even today in India, these hymns are fully used, and that no worship, no yajna can ever be complete without these Vedic prayers. Now when we discuss Agni Suktam, although we mentioned in the beginning that the focus was never on the life of the sages or his times, but usually 3 things are mentioned. Every time there is a Sukta, the name of the sage who composed it or who realized it. Usually they are known as mantra drashta. Mantra drashta basically means seer of that mantra. Seer of that mantra means one who realized that in the depths of his meditation and taught to his disciples. Now who exactly composed that, who exactly put it in meter, that's not known. But as far as the spiritual truth is concerned, that is by that particular sage. Second thing that is named is name of the god, and third is the chand, the meter in which it's composed. Now Agni Suktam is by Madhu Chanda. Madhu Chanda was son of Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra is a very famous character, very famous sage. Gayatri Mantra is by Vishwamitra, and this Agni Suktam is by his son, whose name was Madhu Chanda. And obviously this hymn is dedicated to Agni, and it is in Gayatri Chanda. Gayatri is a particular kind of Chanda. Fire is something very fascinating, and this hymn is to fire god. Fire is fascinating because it preserves you, it sustains you, and it also destroys you. You cook food on it, so it preserves you. During winter, it gives you warmth and protects you. And if you are not careful about it, it burns you to ashes. It's so fascinating. Rudyard Kipling, in his book, Jungle Book, he has created those characters, Mowgli, and there are those wolves. And they're talking about fire as a red flower. It's a beautiful simile. It's like a flower, red flower. They say that everybody is scared of it. And there, those wolves say that your people, Mowgli is somebody, he's a human being who had been somehow lost in the forest. Says your people know how to prepare that red flower. You go, learn the art of it, and then you can tame everybody. It's a beautiful passage. Because somewhere, unknowingly, Rudyard Kipling is talking about the beginning of fire in this world. And fire fascinates everybody. Young boys, they're fascinated. When we were young, that was that old wood oven. I used to be fascinated by that. And during winter, we would always be sticking around those ovens. And in mythologies also, we have in Greek mythology Prometheus, who stole fire from the heaven for this world. In Indian tradition, of course, it says that the gods created fire for the welfare of the mankind. And fire exists in three forms. One is on the earth, one is in the heaven working for gods, and another is in the ocean. This is known as Badwanal. There is ocean fire. So fire exists in water too, on water, land and sky. Now if you think that there is just fire and it is being worshipped as God, no, it's not that. It has different properties, as we shall see. So fire is essentially worshipped. It's the sacrificial fire that is being worshipped. It's not any fire that is being worshipped. During sacrifice, the sages used to have two pieces of wood known as arani cart, that firewood, and they would rub them in a particular order, and from that the fire would come. It was known as sacrificial fire. And this sacrificial fire, in this, anyone who had his sacred thread, that young boy, he was expected to perform certain rituals, both morning and evening. And this tradition had to continue till he died. It's such an important ritual for them. So, and every kind of worship that took place in Hindu home related to fire. Most of these oblations were offered in the fire. So this fire, being sacrificial fire and gift of God to the human beings, fire had many names. One of them name is Jata Veda or Jata Vedas, which basically means he is the knower of all beings. He knows all. And also known as Vishwa Veda, Jata Veda, Vishwa Veda. Jata Veda also means knower of everything. And Vishwa Veda is knower of the entire universe. So there is nothing that Fire does not know. Now if you think of the fire that burns in, say, modern day homes, it's not that, it is a sacrificial fire. It's the divine that is behind that fire. It is that divine that is being worshipped. And it is that divine which is Vishwa Veda and Jata Veda. And yet it is coming to us in the form of fire. For example, there is a great actor in different movies and different dramas. He comes in with different role. So the divine has now come as the role, in the role of the sacrificial fire. And now is known as Vishwa Veda and Jata Veda. Now since the gods created fire for human beings, Agni is considered to be very close to Indra. Indra is the leader of gods. So Indra and Agni, they are very great friends. And we had mentioned earlier that they are known as twin gods. So Indra and Agni is one of those twin gods. Then there is Mitra and Varuna, they are friends. Now this fire, sacrificial fire, has certain characteristics, and it is mentioned. First of them is, it is ever young, because it is produced every morning. The most famous of these daily sacrifices was known as Agni Hotra. So every morning, they would light their fire, and because it would be lighted every morning, it was known as ever young. It has just been produced. And at the same time, it is also known as the oldest. No sacrificer, and there has been no sacrificer who is as old as fire. In Purusha Suktam, another hymn of the Vedas, we come across where God sacrificed himself. God sacrificed himself into fire, this divine fire, so that the creation could take place. And creation itself is an act of yajna. So naturally, and in that, God, the sacrifice, fire God himself was the priest. So that's why he is the oldest. He is the oldest sacrificer. So on the one hand he is very young, and on the other hand he is the oldest. Because before creation of things took place, fire was there. Fire was there, sacrifices were made, and he himself was the priest. Why, we shall be discussing. And it says that the first sacrifice, as we said, was made by him, by which this creation came up. And since he is produced every day by rubbing the two pieces of wood, so those arani is the technical name for those woods. They are known as his parents too. So on the other hand, it is oldest. On the other hand, he has parents, wood as his parent, not wood, arani as his parents. And also he is son of strength, because it requires strength to rub those pieces of wood and create fire. So we find how on the one hand you have the infinite, on the other hand you have the mask of the finite. So being gift of God to human beings, he is the only immortal who is with the mortal. Like God is not amongst us. And even the small gods with small g like Indra, Varuna, Mitra, they are not with us. But Agni, he is ever present amongst us. And that's why Agni is beloved of human beings. Because on the one hand he is God, and he is also the priest of gods. We shall be mentioning it in a while. Essentially fire is God. He is immortal. Nothing can extinguish fire. He is the first created. And he is the first performer of sacrifices. And he is immortal, and yet he is present with the mortals. So human beings have a tremendous affinity for fire. Although in Zoroastrianism also we find there is this tradition of fire worship, and of course there is a deep link between Vedic religion and the religion of the Parsis. But then there are differences, as we shall see. So, this fire god, who is the immortal amongst mortal, when offerings are made to it, is fire who carries these things to gods. You won't believe. Sometimes the questions come about Hindus being burnt on pyre, cremation. There also it is the same principle. This body is now being offered to fire, and this is the last sacrifice that a Hindu makes. And the fire god, he carries as an offering to the heaven. And that's how people go to heaven. You may not agree to it, we may not agree to it, but that's how the Hindus perceive this world. So, with these a few basic ideas, we begin the mantra. The first mantra says, Agni Milde Purohitam Yagyasya Devam Ritwijam Hotaram Ratna Dhatamam. We pray, or I pray to Agni. Its term is Agni Milde. You'll see if you look at those ancient Vedic texts, sometimes they write Agni Mile, sometimes they write Agni Mide. The very pronunciation of it is gone. It's law and Agni Milde. Law and that pronunciation is gone from India, and that's why some people write it as Agni Mile and some write it as Agni Mide. The general term in North India has become Da. But the correct pronunciation is combination of law and da. And in ancient texts we will find there is a special symbol used which indicates the pronunciation is different. Anyway, we will use da, Agni Mide. So, Agni Mide Purohitam. He is like the priest. He is conceived as priest of gods. And the gods have all the power over the asuras, the demons, simply because Agni is performing the yajna. And Agni is the first priest who performed the sacrifice in which God himself was sacrificed to create this universe. So he is the divine priest, he is the first priest. And he also carries things. And Agni has thousands of names based on these properties of his. So Agni Vele, he is the Purohitam. And Yagyasya Devam, he is the God of the sacrifices. Any kind of sacrifice that one makes, whatever kind of sacrifice, he is ultimately the God of sacrifices. Like you have God of thunder, you have God of waters, you have God of this, you have God of that. Of course, the present generation knows more about God of love only. So, he is God of sacrifice. Yagyasya Devam. And Ritwijam. Now, Ritwijam is again, there is Ri, as in Rig Veda. The term is known as Ri. Ri is, if you write, is R-U-I. Ri. Pronunciation is actually Ri. But this pronunciation being very difficult, South Indians and Maharashtra pronounce it as Ru. You will see Amrut. And North Indians took the last part, Amrit. But actual pronunciation is very complicated, Ri. So Ritwijam. He is the Ritvik, the Hotri. Oh, Ritwijam, Hotaram, Ratnadhatam. He is Hotaram, Hota. Hota is the priest. We shall discuss. And Ratnadhatamam, he gives all the wealth. He gives you all the wealth in return of the sacrifices made. So, Agni Mide, Ida is used in the sense of Stuti of Agni. And when Agni is worshipped, he rewards the worshippers with protection and heroic sons, ample food and immense riches. This is what the commentators have to say. Commentary means basically we take help from Sayanacharya. Left to itself, Vedic Sanskrit and Vedic mantras are impossible to understand. Just impossible to understand. We have to take help of the commentaries. And it says, Purohitam Yagyasya Ritvijam Hotaram. 3 terms are being used. Purohit, Yagyasya Ritvik and Hota. So, during any sacrifice, any yagya, there used to be priests from 4 different Veda. The one who was master of Rig Veda was known as Hota. It's a technical term, Hota. Even today, those who recite Rig Veda are known as Hota. And those who are from Yajur Veda, they are known as Advaryu. Advaryu, that's the name. And they pour those offerings, those oblations. And Sam Veda, they are known as Udgatri, Udgatha. And there is Atharva. Atharva Veda was not directly involved in the yagya. They were like superintendents and were known as Brahma. So we have Hota, Advaryu, Udgatha and Brahma. Of these, Hota was very important. Here Agni is being addressed as Hota. So Agni's most salient feature is his priesthood. He is the priest for the gods. The way we have priests during any puja, any worshipping act. So Agni is also the priest of the gods. And he is the great priest the way Indra is the great warrior. In earlier times the belief was the warriors could win war only when they were blessed by the priests. So Indra and Agni have that kind of joint venture, and that's why they have great friendship. And then Devam, there is the term Devam. Devam has different meanings. Most important is Danadva. They make gifts. That's why they are known as Deva. Deepanadva. They light up things. They have the light of knowledge. Dyotnadva. They are lighted beings. Adyusthano. Dyu is heavens. They live in the heavens. That's why known as Devata. So when we talk of gods with small g, they are known as Devata, Deva. Devata have different characters. They have spiritual wisdom. They are lighted beings. And they make gifts. They specially lies in making gifts. People who make gifts, they have divine qualities. And lastly, they are heavenly beings. And Ratna Dhatamam. Ratna is defined as Ramaniyatvat Ratnatvam. Thing that attracts. And that thing can be anything. It can be wealth, it can be strength, it can be anything. So in general, Agni is perceived as the great benefactor of the human beings. Agni is perceived as that sacred fire where if you pour oblations, he will carry your offerings to the gods and the gods in return will give you benefits. This has been a very traditional Hindu concept, and it's not the question of right or wrong. It is on these principles that the Hindus have lived. And from there it moves to Agni purve bhi rishibhi idyo nutanairat sadevang eha vakshati. O Agni, who has been worthy of worship by the ancient sages and also of the modern sages, may he bring the gods here. Now see, it's a very interesting concept. When the sacrifice is being made, yajna is going on, the sacrificial fire, Agni, is being worshipped. There is an adoration about him. O Agni, O Lord of fire, you have been adored by the ancient sages, and you are adored even by the present sages. That shows the tradition. In India, tradition is very, very, very important. Somebody comes up with an idea and says that worship this and you will get results. It may catch people's fancy. For a while, people may go running after that. But the real strength, the real object of worship is only what has been worshipped since time immemorial. Sri Ramachandra is venerated simply because he has been worshipped by ancient sages and is worshipped by present day sages too. And Agni is being, here he is being extolled. Prayer is being made. Oh Agni, you are great. The ancient sages also prayed to you. They adored you. And the sages of the present times, they too adored you. And my request is, please bring the gods here. Not only that fire carries things up, he can also bring gods down. So it's a firm belief of the Hindus, and we cannot go on elongating talks. But even Sri Ramakrishna used to see that when he offered things to Mother Kali herself would accept those things. So it's not something imaginary. If somebody thinks that things we are discussing is imaginary, no, it's not. When offerings are made to Agni, he accepts. There's a difference. The Purohit, one who is offering, he has to be capable. If I sit down to offer and you sit down to offer, he may not be present in his divine form. It might just be the ritualistic aspect of worship. But when those great ones, those who have those purified minds and who are really spiritually uplifted, for example, when Sri Ramakrishna was offering, Mother Kali was present there. And there is that story of Ram Lala, whom Sri Ramakrishna used to feed, and that Ram Lala used to walk and be with Sri Ramakrishna all the while. And Sri Ramakrishna's disciple was Swami Samarpanananda ji, who wrote that famous work Leela Prasanga, known as the Great Master. While describing, says that when Sri Ramakrishna used to narrate those stories, he used to look at that idol of Ashtadhatu made of 8 metals and wonder, oh my God, is that same thing that used to move around with Sri Ramakrishna? That's why during yajna, whenever a yajna is performed, the yajman means the householder who wants something performed, he looks for some priest who is really noble, who is good, who has a pure character, who is spiritually uplifted, because only then there will be the actual presence of God. And here the performer, he worships the fire god. First he prays, he is extolling him and says, bring the gods here, because after this, when the offerings will be made in the name of one god after another, they should be here, not that only you go carrying. May this place be sanctified and may these gods be present here. So there are two very important things. The assertion by the worshipper that may gods be present here, and secondly the importance of tradition. This tradition has been going on since ages. Agni has been worshipped since ages and is being worshipped even today. That's the praise part, that's the prayer part. And what is the consequence of it? May you bring the gods here. And it says that Agnina Raim Asnavat Poshameva Dive Yasasam Aviravattamam. These are very ancient Sanskrit. This is known as Vedic Sanskrit. And he says, through Agni, may the sacrifice obtain treasure which increases day by day. Because see, this is a general prayer. It is not a specific prayer which is being done for any particular purpose. It is in general. Like, for example, people pray in general. Those who perform japa dhyan, Every morning and evening they sit down and take the Lord's name. There is no specific purpose in it. They just do it. They do it out of love, out of their desire to be spiritually uplifted. It said, "Oh Lord, give us riches that increases day by day." So there is no specific prayer involved in it. Now you may wonder that we are discussing spirituality and we are also discussing obtaining treasures. Here it may be remembered that the Vedas are mostly about well-being in this world and in the next world, in the heaven. So when the prayers were made, when the sacrifices were made, the goal was to obtain well-being in the form of earth and calm, and also in the form of Swarga Prapti, going to the heaven, through these sacrifices, through this prayer. It says, Yashasam Avir Vattamam. Says, we may have such treasures that may bring glory, and it should be rich in offsprings. So, through one prayer, these sages, they are asking for quite a few things. There should be riches, there should be glory, and there should also be offsprings. So there is Putraishana, Vittaishana, Lokashana, all the three combined together. Putraishana is when you are asking for progeny, children. Vittaishana is when you ask for wealth. Lokashana is basically asking for higher heavens, but can also be translated to mean to get name and fame. Agneyam yagyam madhvaram vishwata paribhurasi sa iddevesu gacchati. Here, O Agni, the sacrifices, O Agni, the sacrifice, which is free from interruption, of which you are the guardian on every side, goes assuredly to the gods. That means the sacrifice that we are making, may it continue to be free of interruptions. And this protection comes from you, O fire god. A householder is performing a yajna, and he wants that this yajna should be completed properly. There should not be any interruption to it. And so yajna is being prayed. O Lord, we pray unto you that my sacrifice remain protected from all sides by you. Here Advaram means free of interruption by evil forces. You might remember in popular story of Sri Rama, Vishwamitra was performing yajna, and those demons, they used to come and somehow cause interruptions by throwing blood and bones. And not only that, you will see that if you sit down to perform tapasya, if you sit down to perform jap dhyan, prayers, some kind of interruption will be there. Adhyatmik, Adibhotik, Adidevik. The moment you sit down to japa, you will find that your head feels like getting scratched. And suddenly your back will feel like getting scratched. And you feel like making your body straight. And suddenly some work you will remember. And you never can sleep properly when you go to bed at night. The moment you sit down for japam, suddenly sleep seems to take over. These are all, bigna to yajna. And japa is manasik yajna. So your guru, from whom you had initiation, he would always say that, pray to Ganesha. Pray to Ganesha that there should not be any vigna, there should not be any interruptions, obstructions to your yajna. This is a sacrifice, and here Agni is being prayed, O Lord, protect us. In Sri Ramakrishna's biography, there is this description. Even today you will see that when some worship is made, some yajna is made, the priests in every worship, they take some Ganga Jal and sprinkle all around, telling Rang. There is a Rang mantra, R-A-N, or R and Anuswar is there, Rang. And when Sri Ramakrishna used to throw that, he used to clearly see that a ring of fire has surrounded him. You find it officially recorded in Sri Ramakrishna's biography. Difficult to believe, but these are facts. Actually, this comes from this mantra. The practice of worship and the kind of prayers that we are having here, exactly these things are practiced even today in a different form. Every puja, whether it's a household puja or in temples, large puja, small puja, whatever kinds of worship you are making, the priest will sit down, will do certain basic rituals, and one of them is to take some Ganga Jal. First he himself takes to purify himself, and then he takes that and says Rang and throws water all around him. And basically it's about a ring of fire surrounding so that the worship does not get interrupted, it does not get disturbed. And Sri Ramakrishna used to see a ring of fire so that the evil forces may not enter and disturb it. That's why rituals are very important in religion. People usually think that rituals are all meaningless thing. No, it's not that. Rituals are very important. And then once again fire god is being requested to bring all other gods. Agnir hota kavi kratu satyasya chitra shavastama deve bhi agamat. May Agni, the hotri, hota, kavi kratu, it's Agni hota we explain. Kavi kratu. Kavi means one who can see the past, present and future simultaneously. Krantadarshi, that's why Kavi is known as Krantadarshi. And Kratu essentially means wisdom, strength, religious light. And here Kavi Kratu is taken simultaneously to mean the truly wise. And it says that, O Agni, who is Hota, who is Kavi, who is Kratu, and Satyaschitra Shavastamaha. Shavastamaha is Chitra basically means beautiful. Shavastama is grain or wealth, something like that. We can say about wonderful glory. So Agni is being praised. Now when these kind of praises are done by spiritually uplifted person, Agni indeed makes favor. In Mahabharata we come across many instances when somebody was in some kind of trouble or needed some kind of help, and they made some prayers and fire god appeared before them and helped them. But the condition is that persons like us, whose mind is not pure, who is not an uplifted soul, these prayers will not have any effect. But if a person is spiritually elevated, it will definitely have effect. He says, this prayer is being made so that gods may come here. And then, Yadam Gadasu se tamagne bhadram karishyasi tavetat satyam angirah. O fire, whatever good in the form of wealth, house, progeny, etc., you will grant to the sacrificer, that shall indeed be your own, O Angirasa. First, Yad Anga, the word is Anga, where fire is being addressed, and it ends with Angirasa. Angirasa is believed to be born of fire, born of charcoal. So Angirasa is in some way son of Agni. So to soften up Agni, he is also being addressed as Angirasa. Once a very senior monk had told me that there is a possibility that Angirasa is one of the very ancient sages who mastered the art of making fire by rubbing those arani cart, the firewoods. That may be true, may not be true. But in mythologies, Angiras is believed to be born of charcoal. So basically Angiras is, in India, these kind of divine births. Dronacharya was born in a pot, Drona. So we in India, these ideas that people getting born in very unusual places through unusual methods is very common. She says that whatever good comes to the sacrificer, and that sacrificer can be anybody. It can be the person who is praying, and it might be prayer for somebody else. She says whatever good comes to him, it will be because of you. There's a humility involved in it. And he says, Upatvagne dive dive dosavastar dhya vayam namo bharanta emasi. This is such ancient language. In fact, through normal Sanskrit, it's difficult to find the meaning of it. O Agni, we, the worshipper, come every day, both morning and evening, with prayer, making obeisance to you, so you be pleased with us. Here the term is dosha vastaha. Dosha means night and vastaha means day. So sacrifices like Agnihotra were performed both in the morning and the evening, early morning and evening. This is seventh mantra of this hymn. Upatvagne dive dive dosa avastar dhyavayam namo bharanta emasi. Says Agni, we come to you both morning and evening with all respect to worship you. Do not disappoint us. There is a claim. The worshipper is claiming. In one of these next classes, we will be having Ishavasyopanishad as a way of life for the Hindus. There is the same thing. That I have been worshipping you. I have been worshipping you all my life, morning and evening. And this is my right. I have loved you. And because I have loved you, it's my right to get your affection too. It's an amazing concept. When we began initially, it was something like we are praying. It's like, slave mentality. You are falling before somebody like there is a king and you are praying, grant me this favor, do this for me. No, now he's claiming. We have been coming, like in the earlier days, every home used to have a special place where sacrifices were made. It was often known as Yagyashala. Now this has been changed by Puja Ghar. Most Hindu homes have Puja Ghar. So earlier it was Yagyashala where operations would be offered. And says that we have been coming every morning and evening. And when these Brahmins, they used to go on some tour and all. So in Manusmriti there are rules. If you are out on a voyage, you are somewhere, how you should be performing your this Agnihotra karma, etc. And that's why the Brahmins were never permitted to go overseas. Because when you are traveling on the sea, it's not possible for you to create fire and perform Agnihotra karma, etc. So slowly it became a sin to cross the ocean. So here it is the claim that I demand. It's my demand, it's my right. And Rajantam Advarana Gopamritasya Didivim Vardamanam Svedame. We come again and again to you. It's not the first time I have come. Usually when there is an examination time or when we are in need, we run to a temple and pray that, oh Lord, save us in this crisis situation. The priest is telling that it's not like that. We have been coming to you again and again. And you were resplendent like fire. It's in all glory. It's bright. And Gopam Ritasya, the sacrifices that are made, you are the guardian of that. And Gopam Ritasya. Rita here is constant illuminer of a Rita. Rita is a technical term and in one of our later talks we will be discussing more of it. You can say it's the world order. And the Vedic sages placed so much of importance to this rhythm. Rhythm is sometimes equated with truth, righteousness and things like that. But rhythm is essentially world order. In one of our later classes we will be discussing more of it. Says that the world order that is maintained, you are the keeper of that, you are the guardian of that. And Vardamanam Svedame, you are increasing your own place of stay. That is, the sacrificial place is there, and there the sacrifices come, and they go on putting oblations, so the fire keeps increasing. So, says that, O fire, O Agni Devta, these are your qualities. So, do favor us. How? Sana pite sunevagne supayano bhava sachaswana swastaye. O Agni, you are great. You have these greatness. But I am also not ordinary. I also come to pray to you every morning and evening without any break. And I am also dedicated to you. You know what? This fact that a devotee has demand over his Easter God, it comes again and again. Like for example, there is one very interesting story when Vishnu was cursed by Narada. The story is very common story that once Narada wanted to marry Lakshmi. Lakshmi was not yet married. And somehow things had gone wrong with him. So he went to Vishnu and said, give me your Hari Roop. Now Hari also means monkey. So Vishnu converted his face in that of a monkey. And now when Lakshmi, that Swayamvar was there, Lord Vishnu himself was there, and Narad was continuously running in front of Lakshmi to show his face, imagining that he would be looking like Vishnu, but his face looked like that of a monkey. And so ultimately somebody said, why are you jumping so much in front of Lakshmi? Just go look at your face. So he immediately ran to a pond and looked at his image and found that it was a monkey face. I became furious with Vishnu. And he said that, see, you have cheated me, you have cheated me. So okay, fine, I also curse you. You will be born as human beings and you will have to take help of monkeys. I curse you. So then Lord Vishnu says, okay, fine, I accept your curse. But I wanted to take your mind away from such worldly things, that's why I did this to you. The story is so cute that the devotee, he also gets mad at his own God, his Ishta. He says, Agni, be easily accessible to us. You are great, but I am also devoted to you. And be accessible how? Like father to son. The way a father is accessible to son, you also be accessible to us. Because I have a demand over you. And of course, be ever united with us in our welfare. The implied meaning here is that Indra is so powerful, Indra is so rich, because he is united with Agni, the priest. So if I also get united with you, since Indra is so powerful and so rich in his own world, I can also be powerful, I can also be rich in my own world. So that is the prayer. Now this prayer can be performed individually and for others. But see, the condition is, it will not fulfill the condition, because there it says, that I come to you every morning and every evening. Because we don't do it, so it doesn't work. But you will be surprised that most Brahmins, till a few years ago, they used to perform Agnihotra. And I heard somewhere that there is one Brahmin family in Maharashtra, their Agnihotra fire has not extinguished in last more than 1,000 years. They have been continuing that tradition without any break. They are so firm about it. Through father-son relation, that generation after generation they have been maintaining that fire. That fire is generally not extinguished. There are different kinds of sacrifices. Sometimes it is created afresh, and sometimes they cover it in such a way that it does not get extinguished. So here it is that, O Agni, be kind to us, the way father is kind to his son, and always be united with us for our welfare. But mind it, the condition is there. The condition is not that I am offering so you do it. Condition is, I have been your devoted worshipper for years, and every morning and evening I have been doing this. So this is the first hymn of the Rig Veda. And in the next class, we will be covering a very interesting concept. It's known as Devi Suktam. Devi Suktam is used in Durga worship, but it has a very interesting concept behind it, because Devi Suktam comes at two different places, and sometimes it appears as if it's Mother Durga speaking, and sometimes it appears as if the Rishika, the female sage who composed it, is speaking. That makes it very fascinating. Thank you very much.